Have you ever felt like your mind was no longer your own? Like you're awake, alert, even functioning, but something deeper, something invisible, has quietly taken the wheel of your life? If you've ever caught yourself stuck in a loop of overthinking, anxiety, shame, or self-sabotage, this isn't weakness. It's not even a lack of discipline. It's a psychological truth that Carl Jung tried to warn us about over 100 years ago. Because the real threat isn't out there. The real threat is within. When the mind becomes a silent master, pulling the strings behind your choices, your fears, and your logic. Jung taught that we do not have a psyche. We are possessed by it, especially when we try to ignore it. And if you don't make your unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But here's the truth most people never hear. You can take the power back. Not by controlling every thought, but by understanding what's really driving them. This isn't just another video about mindset. It's a wake-up call for those ready to stop surviving their mind and finally learn how to guide it. And if you're ready to go deeper, to fully understand your emotional patterns, reconnect with your inner voice, and experience real mental clarity, you'll find something powerful waiting for you in the pinned comment. It's something that's already helping others walk back into themselves with purpose and peace. Now take a breath, because what you're about to hear might change everything. If this message speaks to your soul, make sure to subscribe. This space was created for minds like yours, ready to awaken. We live in a world that praises mental strength, discipline, logic, resilience. But what if I told you that most of the time, your conscious mind is not the one in charge? Carl Jung spent his life exploring the invisible forces that control us, not from outside, but from within. He discovered that beneath our daily routines, our polished identities, and our well-rehearsed smiles, there exists a vast, untamed force, the unconscious, a place where your memories, traumas, fears, desires, and archetypes live. A place that speaks in symbols, not words, in patterns, not plans. And when you ignore that force, it doesn't disappear. It begins to act on its own, quietly, powerfully, relentlessly. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's not philosophy, that's psychology, and it explains why so many people feel disconnected from their choices, drained by their relationships, and haunted by emotions they can't explain. Because your mind isn't simply a tool. It's a wild animal, and if you don't learn to understand it, it will become your master. But here's the deeper truth. Mastering your mind has nothing to do with suppressing emotion or silencing thoughts. It's about recognizing which part of you is speaking. Is it the voice of your wounded inner child, your hidden complexes, your repressed shadow? The greatest illusion is thinking you're in control while being ruled by the parts of yourself you've never faced. In this video, we'll walk through Jung's most powerful insights on how to free yourself from unconscious control and reclaim the clarity, calm, and power that were always meant to be yours. The illusion of control. When your mind turns against you, we like to believe we're in control, that every decision we make is logical, that we know what we want, that we're choosing our paths with full awareness. But if that were true, why do we keep repeating the same mistakes? Why do we stay in relationships that drain us? Why do we silence ourselves in rooms where we should speak? Why do we self-sabotage the very moment something good begins to happen? Carl Jung called this the illusion of control, because most of what drives our daily choices isn't conscious thought, it's the unconscious mind. And when you don't realize this, your mind starts working against you, not out of malice, but out of unintegrated pain. Imagine trying to drive a car with someone else pressing the gas, the brakes, and occasionally pulling the wheel, and you can't even see them. That's what living without understanding your unconscious is like. You think you're in control, but you're just reacting to old fears, buried memories, childhood roles, and unhealed wounds. This is why you can walk into a room and feel instantly uncomfortable without knowing why. It's why certain people trigger you, even if they didn't do anything objectively wrong. Your mind isn't responding to the present, it's reacting to the past that's still alive inside you. Jung explained that we each carry within us complexes, emotionally charged bundles of memories and beliefs that operate independently of our will. They have a voice, they have an agenda, and when you're unaware of them, they become you. Have you ever said, "I don't know what came over me"? That wasn't a moment of weakness. That was a complex taking control. It might be the inferiority complex, making you shrink in moments when you should rise. It might be the mother complex that keeps you chasing unavailable people, or the martyr complex that makes you sacrifice your needs for others just to feel worthy of love. These are not flaws in your character. They are patterns rooted in pain. And the more unaware you are of them, the more power they have over your life. This is how the mind becomes your enemy. Not because it's evil, but because it's fragmented. And fragments fight for attention in silence. You're not lazy. You're exhausted from battling thoughts that were never truly yours. You're not unworthy. You're wounded by narratives that were planted in you before you had words to challenge them. You're not broken. You're just divided between who you've become and who you really are. The greatest danger is mistaking this war for reality. You think you're just bad at relationships, but really, you're recreating unresolved attachment wounds. You think you're just not good enough, but really, you're carrying internalized shame from years of unmet emotional needs. You think you're in control, but you haven't questioned the voice in your head that sounds exactly like the person who once hurt you. That voice? It's not truth. It's programming. And if you don't pause long enough to examine it, you'll keep obeying it, without even realizing. Jung believed that the unconscious isn't just personal, it's collective. That means many of your thoughts aren't even yours. They are ancestral, cultural, systemic. You inherited fears you never earned. You carry shame that doesn't belong to you. You breathe in beliefs shaped by a society that profits from your disconnection. And yet, all of this is operating beneath the surface, guiding your mind like a current under still water. This is why life often feels like a loop. You heal a little. You grow. Then suddenly, you're back in the same place, reacting the same way, blaming yourself for not being stronger. But this isn't about strength. It's about awareness. Because the only way to master your mind is to see it clearly. Not just the thoughts you think, but the ones that think you. Let's pause here. Take a breath, close your eyes for a moment and ask, who am I when I'm not trying to please, to fix, to hide, to perform? That silence you feel, that's where your real mind begins. Not the reactive mind, not the programmed mind, but the witnessing mind. The one that can observe your thoughts without becoming them. This is the power Jung wanted us to reclaim, to no longer be slaves to the echoes of our pain, to no longer confuse mental chaos with identity, to no longer hand over the steering wheel of our life to invisible fears dressed as logic, because once you see the illusion, you can begin to dissolve it, and only then can your mind become your ally, not your enemy. Jung's truth, complexes, archetypes, and the shadow at war within. Carl Jung didn't just study the mind, he mapped the invisible. He revealed that what we call personality is often just the mask, the persona we wear to be accepted, to be safe, to survive. Beneath that mask lives a world far more complex. A world made of ancient patterns, archetypes, and powerful emotional structures, complexes, that shape how we see ourselves, how we see others, and how we experience life. Let's begin with complexes. A complex is not a flaw, it's a part of you that split off during a moment of pain, fear, or emotional overload. It carries a specific wound and a voice. Imagine this. You're a child. You cry out for love. But no one comes. Your mind creates a belief. I must not be important. Now, as an adult, every time someone ignores you, cancels plans, or doesn't reply right away, that voice returns. See? You're still not enough. That's a complex. It's not logical. It's emotional memory. And unless you bring it into the light, it will hijack your reactions, relationships, and self-worth. You may not know it's happening, yes, but your body will. Tight chest, flushed skin, racing heart. That's not drama. That's activation. Jung said these inner parts don't just live quietly inside us. They form systems, sub-personalities. And when one takes over, you're no longer responding, you're reenacting. But why do they exist? To protect you. Even the most painful complex was born out of the need to survive something that once felt unbearable. And that's why self-hate never leads to healing. You cannot shame a wound into silence. Instead, you have to meet it. Hold it, name it, and bring it into relationship with your conscious self. Now let's talk about archetypes. Jung believed these are the universal characters within the human psyche. The mother, the hero, the shadow, the trickster, the child, the lover, the sage, we all carry them. And they rise within us at different times, shaping our desires, our fears, our behaviors. When you fall in love suddenly and irrationally, the lover archetype may have taken the wheel. When you feel the urge to sacrifice yourself to save someone, perhaps the martyr is whispering. When you resist growth or sabotage your progress, the trickster may be playing in your unconscious. These archetypes are not problems, they are teachers. But only if you recognize them. Most people don't. They become possessed by an archetype and mistake it for personality. That's how someone ends up always being the fixer, or the rebel, or the victim. They're not aware that a story is being lived through them, and they've forgotten they can rewrite it. And then there is the shadow, Jung's most radical, most liberating idea. The shadow is everything you refuse to see in yourself. Your repressed anger, your envy, your desire to be seen, your hunger for control, your untapped creativity, your need for affection, your inner power that once scared someone. So they told you to bury it, but the shadow never disappears. It waits, and when ignored, it leaks. You explode over small things. You attract the same toxic people. You keep repeating patterns that leave you empty. This isn't coincidence, it's projection. You're not reacting to reality. You're reacting to the parts of yourself you've exiled, now appearing through others. Have you ever hated someone instantly, without reason? Felt irrational resentment towards someone too confident or too free? Jung would say, pause. What part of you are they reflecting? This is the hard truth. What you judge most harshly in others is often what you're most afraid to see in yourself. But here's the freedom and the invitation. The shadow isn't evil. It's powerful. It holds your authenticity, your voice, your magic. To integrate it is not to become dark, and it's to become whole. That's what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation. The process of becoming who you really are. Not who the world told you to be. But you cannot individuate without facing the shadow. You cannot master your mind while rejecting parts of your soul. True healing isn't about controlling the mind. It's about reconciling with it. To sit with the emotion instead of escaping it, to hear the voice of your inner child and say, I'm here now, to recognize the hero within you and the wounded one too, to stop running from your pain and instead ask, what are you trying to show me? That question alone can change everything. You stop fearing yourself, you stop needing the world to validate your worth, you stop performing and start being, because the mind no longer needs to scream when you're finally willing to listen. Why you keep sabotaging yourself and how to stop. You finally get the opportunity you've been waiting for and suddenly you freeze. You meet someone kind, emotionally available, and feel the urge to run. You promise yourself you'll change, but go back to the same habits the very next day. Why? Why do we sabotage what we say we want? Why do we keep building walls around the very things we long to receive? Carl Jung had a name for this. Unconscious resistance, not laziness, not weakness, but the mind's quiet rebellion against change that threatens its structure, because your unconscious doesn't care if you're happy. It cares if you're safe according to what it learned safety is. And if you learn that love feels inconsistent, then stability will feel unfamiliar. If you learn that success leads to rejection, then progress will trigger fear. If you learn that being seen leads to pain, then visibility will feel dangerous. So your mind does something it was designed to do. It protects you. Even when that protection means destroying everything you've worked for. Jung understood this. He saw that behind every act of self-sabotage is a loyal, yet wounded, inner part. A younger version of you. A forgotten voice that whispers, We've been here before, don't go further, don't get hurt again. And unless you turn toward that voice with curiosity and compassion, you'll keep mistaking sabotage for fate. You'll say, I guess I wasn't meant for this, when in reality you were just afraid of losing what you finally allowed yourself to touch. It's a tragic loop. You want to heal. But healing requires stepping into unfamiliar emotions. And unfamiliarity is what the wounded mind fears most. This is how your mind controls you without you noticing, by keeping you loyal to old pain. By making the past feel safer than the future. By convincing you that discomfort is danger and peace is suspicious. It's not logic, it's programming. And you can't think your way out of it. You have to feel. You have to meet the emotion behind the pattern and let it speak. What does the fear really say? Don't be visible, you'll be judged. Don't trust, you'll be left. Don't grow, you'll be alone. Sound familiar? These voices don't come from your soul, they come from survival. They were shaped during moments of trauma, neglect, disappointment. They protected you once, but now they limit you. And here's the thing. You can't heal by trying to destroy them. You heal by giving them a new job. Instead of saying, shut up, fear, you say, I hear you, but I'm not that child anymore. Instead of avoiding sadness, you sit with it and say, you can move through me. I won't reject you this time. Instead of blaming yourself for not being disciplined, you ask, which part of me is scared right now, and what does it need? This is self-mastery, not control, not suppression, but radical, integrated self-connection. Jung called this becoming whole, and he knew it doesn't come from perfection. It comes from presence. So if you keep sabotaging yourself, here's what you must understand. You're not broken, you're fragmented. There are parts of you that don't trust the version of you that's trying to change, and those parts need to be welcomed, not silenced. Ask yourself, who taught me I had to shrink to survive? Whose voice do I still carry inside me? What part of me believes love is something I must earn? The answers might hurt, but they will set you free. Because every self-sabotage is really a memory, a flashback disguised as hesitation, a ghost disguised as logic. And when you finally stop running from those ghosts, when you name them, see them, hold them in the light, they stop haunting you. They become wisdom. You realize that fear was never your enemy. It was the gatekeeper to your truth. Your pain was never shameful. It was the path back to your strength. Your sabotage was never failure. It was a misdirected prayer for protection. Jung believed that the unconscious is not evil. It simply wants integration, to be felt, to be seen, to be made whole. And until you do that, and until you welcome even the most unwanted parts of yourself, you'll keep finding ways to pull yourself back down, just when life tries to lift you up. So today, begin differently. Don't fight your mind. Listen to it. Ask what it's afraid of. Ask what it's still carrying that isn't yours. And then, gently, begin to let it go. Because the moment you stop fearing yourself is the moment you begin to master the mind, not by conquering it, but by becoming friends with it. How to master your mind through conscious integration. Mastering your mind isn't about control, it's about connection. Carl Jung taught that healing isn't about eliminating thoughts or fixing yourself. It's about making peace between the parts of you that have been at war. We are not single selves. We are constellations of stories. The child who longed for safety, the rebel who fought to be seen, the dreamer, the doubter, the protector, the abandoned, the part of you that pushes forward, and the one that always pulls back. To master your mind is to stop choosing sides and start listening to all of them. Jung called this process integration. It's what happens when you allow your fragmented parts to come back home. When you stop labeling emotions as good or bad, when you stop punishing yourself for coping the only way you knew how. When you start asking every single day, which part of me is speaking and what does it need? That question alone can dissolve decades of guilt, shame, confusion, and fear. Because the mind doesn't want to be ruled. It wants to be understood, and when you give it space to be seen, something extraordinary happens. It calms down. It stops screaming for attention. It stops replaying the past on an endless loop. It stops creating drama just to get you to feel something real. You begin to feel a kind of peace you didn't even know was possible. Not the peace of a quiet room, but the peace of a unified self. This is what Jung meant by individuation, the path of becoming whole, not perfect, not untouchable, but honest, integrated, conscious. To get there, you must begin seeing your thoughts, not as enemies but as messengers, your fears as guardians of something sacred, your resistance as the last defense of a part that once felt helpless. And here's what most people don't know. You don't need to figure it all out alone. There are tools, there are maps, there is wisdom that already exists, patiently, waiting to guide you back to yourself. If you're ready to take that deeper step, to not just understand your patterns but gently transform them, you'll find something in the pinned comment that might support you. It's a guide for those who feel called to heal with clarity, courage, and consciousness. For those ready to reclaim their mind, not with force but with truth. And if this journey speaks to you, I invite you to subscribe. This space was created for souls like yours, quietly powerful, deeply aware, ready to awaken. Because the truth is, you've never been broken. You've just been misunderstood, first by others and then by your own mind. But now the silence is ending. Now the conversation begins. Now the real you returns. So take one more breath. Place your hand over your heart and ask gently, what am I ready to remember about myself? That's where your mastery begins. Not in perfection, but in presence. Not in certainty, but in willingness. Not in controlling the mind, but in finally walking beside it. You are not here to survive yourself. You're here to become yourself. And the path forward is already opening beneath your feet. The quiet revolution of a mastered mind, maybe. No one ever taught you how to listen to yourself. Maybe they only taught you how to obey, perform, achieve, survive. So you became excellent at reading the world, but blind to your own voice. You learned to regulate emotions by avoiding them, to protect your heart by disconnecting from it, to keep going, even when your soul was begging you to stop. But now you're beginning to remember, to hear what was always there, not the noise of doubt or fear, but something deeper, something older. Carl Jung believed that inside every person lives a truth so raw, so real, so complete, that it doesn't need to be fixed. It only needs to be faced. That's what you're doing now. You're facing it, by questioning your patterns, by walking through your shadows, by choosing awareness over autopilot. And that choice, no matter how small, and changes everything, because healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in moments like this, when you pause, when you breathe, when you decide to see the part of you that still hurts, and love it anyway. The mind, once divided, begins to soften. The body, once tense, begins to trust. The soul, once silenced, begins to speak again. This is mastery, not control, but communion. Not perfection, but integration. Not becoming someone else, but returning to who you always were. So if you ever forget this moment, come back. Come back to your breath, to your stillness, to the part of you that already knows. You are not the war inside your head. You are the one who can end it. Now go live from that truth, and I'll meet you again in the silence, in the questions, in the next chapter of your becoming.